Welcome to Strain on the Game, the podcast that reveals what it really takes to keep elite footballers performing at the highest level. I'm Stephen Warnock, former Premier League player, joined by physical performance expert Adrian Lamb. From training ground truths to the financial impact of fitness, we discuss the often overlooked challenges behind the beautiful game. This week, we are going to be diving into one of the hottest debates in football right now, the rise of private coaches in the performance game. More and more players are looking to do this, turning to trainers, nutritionists, and coaches outside the club setup. But why? Go on then, Lammy. Explain it.
Well, the first thing we need to explain is what we mean by external coaches, isn't it? So,
Yeah, absolutely.
What are they? Because we tend to think of external coaches purely in a fitness coach's sense. I think what's brought this subject into the public eye is Paul Heckingbottom, the Preston manager. He had an issue with a player who'd been injured working with a private coach. And obviously it's a disappointing situation for him. He's lost a player and he had a lot to say about it. So that really it's an issue that's been building for a while, I think, but it's really in the public domain now. So because of that, we tend to think of external coaches purely as being fitness coaches, but they're not. There's all manner of different roles available. There's physiotherapists and masseurs and nutritionists and psychologists and analysts even. We have external analysts working and working with players and even technical coaches. We've got strikers coaches and dead ball specialists. So there's all manner of different external coaches.
Yeah, I was listening to a radio show the other week and they had Cameron Jerome on, former striker, being at, I think he's more famed for being at Norwich than most other clubs, and he played at Birmingham, a few other places as well. But Cameron was an interesting one because he's talking about being a striker coach where he will work with players and work on certain movements and give analysis back. But he will also rent a pitch and work with those players. And he's very, very stats driven, which is absolutely fine. But then there is an element where he's going out on the grass. And I found it very, very interesting listening to him. I thought it was a very interesting piece. But he was saying that he's working with a lot of players, an awful lot of players, because people want that, as we all talk about, that 1% and that extra little piece of a little bit of extra something that you can get out of yourself.
Yeah, well, they're often specialised roles, these external coaches, and it's players who are looking for a training service which either it's not available in their parent club, or it is available, but they want it delivered in a different way with a little bit more attention to detail and personal attention to detail. So that's really the extent to it. Is there's lots of different reasons why players would want to go to it, and it's becoming more common. I think it's becoming more common for a number of different reasons. I think one of the reasons is there are more coaches becoming available. From the fitness side of things, we see a lot of established practitioners who've worked in the game for a period of time, leaving professional clubs and establishing their own businesses. But we also see these personal trainers, people who've perhaps never worked in the game, but are attracted by the proposition of working with professional footballers. And I think sometimes they can be a problem.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand always the day-to-day workings of the training regime of a club and how the training is structured. They just see a window and a snapshot of an individual that they try to fill, and that can be a bit problematic, I think.
Yeah, I keep on saying things on social media when you'll see teams warming up or doing their injury prevention work, or they're doing certain exercises, and I'm watching it thinking, I know exactly what you're doing here, and someone on social media is just slagging it off, going, well, that's not right, this isn't right, and I'm thinking, have you actually been in a football club and understand the mechanics of it and what actually goes on and what the reasoning is that you're actually doing this? So I'm guessing for you, it's hugely frustrating when you do get them people on social media who are coming out and having a pop at the guys in the industry.
It is, and it's difficult sometimes to filter out the noise, and it's easier for me because I'm not very active on social media, as anyone who's seen my Instagram account would testify to. I think it's more difficult for players. I think players have got insecurities naturally.
Yeah,
Even when you're playing well, you're wondering about, oh, I'm playing well. When's the dip in form going to come? And I think sometimes we've got people who prey on those insecurities with players and use those as being a mechanism to try and get them to work. "Oh, I can get you a little bit quicker. I can get you a little bit stronger. I can get you a few more goals." And those prey on those insecurities a little bit, and sometimes that's why players are susceptible to these kind of coaches. But I think another reason why we're seeing it more commonly in football now is players are more aware of performance and what goes into
yeah,
performance, you know,
absolutely.
and there are different ways that they can improve their performance. And they're more willing now, I think, more willing now than ever to take ownership over their own performance development and their own fitness. And also, I think players are more powerful. They've got more of a authority with the managers. So if they say they want to work with an
Yeah,
individual private coach external to the coaching staff, I think that managers are more willing to listen to them.
yeah.
I think you've said yourself a number of times on this podcast that if you had your time again, you would consider working with a sports psychologist. So,
Oh,
how
100%.
as a player, how would that look like for you? How would you go about that?
Well, whether it was one that I'd worked with before, and if I'd move clubs, go and use that person again because of the relationship that you've got and an understanding that you've got between each other. I think you often hear about players working with certain individuals, and that name keeps on cropping up, and it doesn't mean that you're going to have to sign a long-term deal with that person. It might be one session, see how it goes. Whether you feel like you get anything out of it, then absolutely fine. I think the other side of it, what we're probably missing here, is there's a lot more money in the game now. Players are being
Mm,
paid an awful lot more compared to what I was being paid and compared to what the guys in the 70s, 80s, and 90s were getting paid. So there's an ability now to hire private chefs, and it doesn't touch the bank balance. It doesn't touch their weekly wages. And I think if you could get a sports psychologist, if you could get a private chef and probably your own masseur that you used on a
mm.
regular basis. Now, if you're spending, I don't know, 10 grand a month on that, people wouldn't be bothered. People would be
Yeah,
thinking, well, that's good value
yeah,
because it's a small price to pay to have that performance led sort of um, set up behind the scenes, and I
yeah.
think that'd be massive. I think that'd be huge, and I think that's what we are seeing now. And I think that's one of the issue, not an issue, but one of the. I actually see it as a positive. I think
Mm,
there's certain elements which are a problem. I think
yeah.
there's a certain element which we're going to go into with fitness coaches. But when I
Mm.
think of a masseur and I think of a chef and a psychologist, I'm working away from the training ground with them. I don't see that as an issue. I
Yeah,
think
I think
that's a positive.
I think creating that performance environment around you as an individual is definitely a positive thing.
Yeah,
out in LA now, and I got speaking to a fitness coach who works privately with a number of NBA players.
yeah.
Doesn't belong to a club. He works with them individually. And he told me the amount of money that LeBron James invests in himself to remain at the highest level of performance. So
Yeah.
I had a look at this online just to sort of confirm what this coach had said to me. So there was an interview that he gave in 2018 where he revealed that he spent $1.5 million every year on creating a performance team around him. So that's
Wow.
chefs, that's masseurs, that's physiotherapists, strength and conditioning, psychologists, and they all travel with him all over the place, and they all are full-time employees of his, and that's what he's taken. And again, I think you make a completely valid point where these things do follow the money. And when you've got the money to invest in yourself and remain at the cutting edge. Now, that was in 2018. I suspect that he's still playing now. that money could now well be over $2 million a year. But when you're making the money that he's making from his
100%.
contract and his
Yeah.
endorsements and staying at the very top of the game,
Yeah.
then it's money well spent, isn't it?
Yeah. I think there'll be an element of where he's at the Lakers, isn't he?
He's at the
So the
Lakers.
Lakers might even want to contribute to that
Oh, I would think so, yeah, without a doubt.
because they're thinking, well, his performances on the court are still huge. The
Yeah,
endorsements that we're receiving off him and the sponsorships that are coming into the club, then it's in our best interest to reward him and to help
absolutely.
facilitate that. So yeah, I
100%.
completely understand that.
And
Yeah,
as this coach explained to me, and I didn't really think of it in this way until he explained it to me. LeBron James has been one of the most successful players for years and years and years, which means that he plays many more games than anybody else because he's
yeah,
always in the playoffs and he always goes through to the finals, or he frequently gets in NBA finals, which means he plays 20-30% more games than anybody else. He gets more game time than anybody else. So he's
yeah,
got more miles on the clock, if you want to think of it in that way.
yeah, yeah.
So in those terms, it's an incredible achievement from
Yeah, it is.
himself, but
Well,
from having that the idea of having that support staff around him has paid dividends.
100%. And I look at another sports as well, and when at the moment, Justin Rose, I think he's 46 now,
Mm,
and he's arguably playing the best golf of his life.
mm.
And he did an interview and he showed people around he's got like an RV and it's got like a cryo chamber in it. It's got a altitude tent in it. It's got all
Really?
these recovery things. And that gets driven to most of the golf courses around America. So when he steps off the course, he knows that he can then go in, work with his team, but he's got the best facilities. Now I think golf's evolved and I think there is at most golf courses now, the PGA do put things on for the players
Yeah.
to help them recover. But even in his head, he was thinking years ahead of the game, how can I prolong my career? And I think that's one of the things that also we have to think about is players aren't just thinking short term, they're thinking long term. How
Yeah.
can I make the most out of my career? Because essentially, definitely football, soccer, American football, basketball, they are short term careers.
Yeah.
So you do have to make the most out of it. So that small investment in what you can give or give yourself gives you a longer chance of having a better career.
Yeah, I think when we think of role models in football, we think of Ronaldo in this sense,
Oh,
don't we? Where he's
100%.
created a team around himself, where he's created that high performance environment, which is all geared around him as an individual, which then benefits the team because he's
Yeah.
performing, he's available for selection, he's rarely injured, and he's continuing to perform into a period of time when other players will have been long since retired.
Yeah.
So, look at as if you're a player, you're a young player now, and you're looking
Oh,
at your role models, and you're thinking about what can I do, who can I emulate to try and maximize my career, not just in terms of what I do week to week, but to extend my career on years. Then surely that those marginal gains they add up, don't
oh
they? And
100% they do.
we talk about you've spoken there about the striker coach Cameron Jerome. Um, how he can potentially add a couple of goals here or 4 or 5 goals and how that adds up over the years and adds the value to the player from a transfer perspective, but from
Yeah,
the
of
wages perspective and all of those things. Players are looking for those to get a competitive edge
course they
and
are.
to increase it. I think that's the driving force behind why players are looking outside of what the clubs can offer them. It's where can I get that personalization of programming? And that personalization to me, custom made, bespoke, fitted around my game. And as
Yeah.
fitness coaches, when we're working in clubs, yes, we do individualize the programs and we'll do all the testing and we'll provide each individual player with an individual player performance program, development program. But when you're in a gym with 25 players, in the weight room with 25 players, or on the grass with 25
Yeah.
players, and what you don't have as a coach is you don't have time because sometimes it can become a little bit like crowd control.
Yeah.
So yes, each player is coming in with an individually designed bespoke program, but I can't split myself 25 ways to coach those players individually
Yeah.
for 45 minutes in each session. So I'm going into the player and I might say, just you need to adjust your foot position there, or your hips are slightly wrong, or keep your head up, or don't pivot from there. But then I've got to move on to the next player. And I liken it. You used to get these things on record. When we were kids, we used to watch Record Breakers, didn't we? And there was always the guy who spins the plates on the stick.
Yeah.
And he's spinning the plates on the sticks and he's going to go for 50. Oh, he's going to go for 50. And he gets to 30 and the first one that he puts on the stick is wobbling a little bit. And he has to go back to give that one a little bit of attention. It's not dissimilar to that when you're in a weight room with 25 players, because you've got arguments over what the music is. You've got somebody trying to hit somebody with a mini band. You've got somebody sneaked a phone in there. Phones are banned. Yeah, my wife's pregnant. She's about to give birth. Well, that's a miracle because that's the 4th time she's given birth in the last 6 months. So, congratulations. So, all of these things, managing individuals, where the true coaching, it's difficult to deliver true coaching, and if you're a player who's looking for these competitive edges, then there is a temptation there to go, I just want to work one-on-one with a coach.
There is an issue with that as well, though, isn't there? In the fact of if you were to put a weight session on for a group of 25 players, and then that player walks away and goes, I haven't done enough. I'm going to go in and do another 1v1 or 1-to-1 session.
Yeah.
And then you overstretch or overstrain yourself, and then you're putting stress on your body because the fitness coach who you're working individually with doesn't know exactly how much you've done or what the session was. Then it can be problematic, can't it?
Oh, massively problematic. And this is, we'll talk about the problems that clubs are facing with that. But yeah, that's where, if you say to a player, no, you can't work with your own strength and conditioning coach outside of the club, the danger is always that you're going to drive that behavior underground and they're going to go and do it anyway. And then you've got no idea what they're doing. And then you've established your training sessions for subsequent days based on an idea of what that player is, where that player is from a fatigue perspective, because you've got a knowledge of what training they've done up to this point. But then there's another session in there that you don't know about.
Yeah.
And then you go on to this next training session, which is completely inappropriate for that player because of what they've done secretly. And then you haven't monitored the workload. There's a risk of overwork, and then the risk of injury comes in. So this is where you've got to make sure everything is open, and we're having communication, and you try to eliminate as much as possible the likelihood of this work with external coaches being done secretively and behind closed doors and away from prying eyes. You need to bring it out into the open, because we've spoken then that players have got more power now, and they'll make decisions for their own training. If they say, no, I'm working with this guy, then you have to accommodate that, because you can't, you're not going to cut off your nose to spite your face, are you? You're not going to say, well, you're doing this anyway, even if it's completely wrong. So we have to bring this behavior, if you want to call it that, out into the open. We have to have an understanding of what they're doing with their coaches.
Yeah.
And we need to know.
It's got to be transparent, hasn't it?
Transparency. And it comes back to that. We'll always talk about it, communication. Yeah. You've got to have communication. My approach, whenever a player said that they wanted to work with an external coach, was brilliant. Bring them in. Great. Let's have a look at them. Let's sit them down. We'll have a meeting. We'll talk with them. Other staff were a little bit, that staff have got egos as well, and they can feel a little bit undermined. Why does he want to work with him? What's wrong with us? Why is he looking at this? What's he got that we can't offer? Well, let's bring him in and find out. And if he's really good, then it's win-win for us because we've got a player who's getting a better level of coaching because there's more attention to detail going into that.
Yeah.
And if the coach is really good, what I'll ask is, can you put on a presentation for our staff and talk us through your philosophies and talk us through some of your delivery practices?
Yeah.
Because that will upskill our staff. Well, let's use them in a positive way. It's too easy to be, let your ego get in the way of things and say, well, no chance, we're not letting him in through the door.
Well,
Bring them in.
especially from when you were working at a football club, then obviously staffs, it's grown now as the amount of strength and conditioning coaches, masseurs, physios. For you as well, probably it's a free body through the door, isn't it?
It's a free member of staff. It's a free member of staff. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm here because we want the team to win. So my job is to put I'll say frequently, is to deliver players to the manager or the head coach who are physically prepared to play the way that they want to play. If I've got 25 players and 2 members of staff, then that's difficult. If I've got a free member of staff who's being paid by the player to come in,
Delight, and he's good.
and he's very, very good, and he might have an area of specialization that we don't have available at the club, why would I not want that person in through the door?
Yeah.
Why would I not want to work there? Sometimes these private coaches, they don't want to come in through the door. They want to use their own facilities, and they might live half an hour away, and they might have a number of different clients working with them, so they can't come in. So that's I'll try and go. Do you mind if I come out and see what you're doing? I think it's too easy to be. I think we need to be collaborative rather than get into conflict with these coaches, and we need to be communicative, and we need to have an understanding of why the player wants to go there, who they're working with, what they're doing while they're there, when the training session is. Yeah. Because again, part of that communication with external private coaches is, okay, just so you know, this is what our game schedule looks like. This is what our training schedule looks like. These are opportunities that we've identified within that training schedule where the players can really work hard. So there's opportunities for you to work with him here, and here. At this point, we really are emphasizing recovery and regeneration because we've got a sequence of games coming up.
Yeah.
So these are perhaps not great times for you to work with him. Or if you are working with him, then perhaps you need to drop the load down a little bit, or drop the volume, keep the intensity high, but drop the volume.
Yeah.
And that way it becomes much more likely to be a successful outcome than an unsuccessful one.
The only argument I'd say to that is if the player is paying for a one-on-one session, he feels like he's got the power to say, no, I want to do more. And then it's a bit of a pressure cooker for the 1v1 coach to go, oh, well, the club's telling me this. Well, I've hired you because I'm not getting enough attention at the club, or I feel like I need more. And that's the downside to it, isn't it? So you're talking about the pros or the pros there of having him from a player's point of view. But the negative side of it is, again, you spoke about it before, the player's always got power, and especially when you're paying the bills.
Absolutely. And I think in my experience of doing that, of having that situation as a private coach, which is what I am now, and working with a player, I'll always have strong communication with the parent club, whoever the club is. I'll always sit down with the staff. I want to know the injury history of the player. I want to know the training history of the player. I want to get as much GPS data from the last 4 weeks of training, so I've got an idea of where that player is physically and what they're capable of, and the kind of loads that they've been exposed to. I'll always take advice from the parent club and from the performance staff at the club in terms of where the boundaries are of what is enough with this player and why. I'm now delivering a session to this player, and that player, as you've said, turns around and says, that's not enough. My job is to be strong enough to say, you've hired me for a reason. The
Trust me.
reason you've hired me is because of my expertise in this field.
Yeah.
And so I call the shots in this. If you didn't want to hire me for this job, then you just go off and do your own training and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I am working to a very set progressive plan, and I'm in charge of that loading.
Yeah.
And so I'll call the shots on that. If you want to step outside of that plan, the session is now over, and you want to go and do a few sprints just to prove a point because you've spat your dummy out a little bit.
Yeah, but how would the club then know that he's gone off and done that? Because you could say that to a club and go, well, actually, we finished this session and he ran off and did another 20 sprints
Yeah,
and he's pulled his hamstring. So
mate.
it's such a difficult balance for you as a private coach, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as a private coach, again, it's got to be honesty. You can't make stuff up. All the data has to go back to the club, and there's I'll write at the end of the training period that I've worked with a player. I'll write a full training report and say this is what we did. These are the drills. These are the exercises. This is the physical outputs. It's full report. There you go. Sometimes you don't hear back from the club, and sometimes you get
Oh,
thank you very much. And sometimes they'll interrogate you a little bit. What did you do on that day to get those numbers, and what did you how did he respond to that? And that's when these relationships are quite collaborative and are strong and are useful. I will say this was the plan. This is what we did, and then it's never happened because the player has always been
receptive
to what we said. Is we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. We are doing enough because this is where we're going with this. So this is what we're doing tomorrow. So in terms of today, this is enough, and we want to see how you react to what we've done today. I think the biggest fear of any private coach, or it should be the biggest fear, is a player getting injured when they are under your supervision, because I think that opens up a can of worms. And for me, I don't think it's happened yet to the best of my knowledge, but the financial implications of a Premier League player being injured working with a private coach, let's say that he's out for 2 months and the club are paying the salary of a player who's not available to them. I'm not aware of a private coach who's been sued either by a player or by a club, but I think
it can't be far off
in the future. I think it's somewhere in the future. Yeah, I mean, I've got liability insurance, and I try to mitigate those risks by having the player sign a contract with me, waivers and disclaimers. There is a possibility that you will get injured doing this, and you understand the risks. And also, I document everything.
Question then off the back of that. So when you're saying there, they'll sign a waiver and there is a chance that they will get injured. Do you feel like then you can't do your job to the full maximum because you're always working maybe 5 or 10% below to make sure they don't pick up an injury?
No, not personally. No, not personally. I'm always trying to get. I'm hired to get players fit and fitter, and I've got,
You just trust what you're doing.
I'm confident enough in my applied practice to be able to prescribe training sessions which will develop fitness. I'm testing players, I'm taxing them, I'm pushing them to the limits.
Yeah.
As I would do if I was working in a club. It's exactly the same for me. Because if I'm kind of wishy-washy about it and a little bit and pulling back a little bit, then I'm not going to be hired very often because I'm not getting players fit. It is something that sits in the back of your mind without question. But I think if it paralyzes your ability as a fitness coach, at some point there will be a player getting injured in a training session with me as a private coach. They may pull a hamstring or a quad. It's inevitable. And the more private work that I do, the more chances of that happening are.
Of course.
But You mitigate the risks in the same way that you would if you were working in a club. You document everything, you analyze your training session, you make sure that you're speaking to the player and you're gauging the reaction of the player to the training that you've exposed them to in previous days, and you adjust accordingly. But yeah, that risk is always going to be there. We'd be foolish to say that it isn't.
Yeah. So if you're in a club, and what's the response from the manager towards this? So if you go and report to the manager, listen, Stephen wants to go and work with a private fitness coach, what's usually the response to that?
The first response is usually, well, what do you think?
Is it?
Yeah. So it's like, again, if you follow through that, right, who are you working with? Is it somebody who is, who's got a level of expertise or a proven track record in the game? Or is it somebody that's been recommended to you from a friend because he's seen something on TikTok?
Yeah.
All right. So if it's somebody who's legitimate, then I can sanction it. If it's somebody who's not legitimate, I might investigate it. Just because they're on TikTok doesn't mean they're no good, but
No.
I'll investigate it a little bit and have a look at what they're doing. And,
But I remember when I was at Villa, and I don't know whether you'll probably know the guy or know the name, but the person that everyone was using around that time was a guy, Jamie Velocity, was it?
I know the name, I don't know the individual.
Yeah, and it just felt like a lot of the players, and I think this was before you came in, were going to him because I've spoke about this many times, so I'm not afraid to speak about it again. When Martin O'Neill was coach at Aston Villa, there was no fitness work. There
Yeah.
was no side of the game. It was just if you want to get fit, get yourself fit. And he was very open about that. I say he was very open about it. He'd kick off about it at times and just say, well, that's up to you to get fit. So there was an element where a lot of the players were going, yeah, I'm going to go to him. And I think there was a response from Martin O'Neill. I was like, well, yeah, you're paying for it. Go and get it. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, without question. And I think that's another reason why players do at times seek out private work. Exactly that situation you've just described, that managers sometimes do not do a lot of fitness work in between games.
Yeah.
And players who have been experienced and been exposed to different training regimes, either at that club with other managers or at previous clubs before they've moved there, and they know what they need to do to get themselves ready.
Know the benefits.
You're one of those players.
Yeah.
Would be like, I need to do more. I need to do more because, then players need to be exposed. We've spoken about it a number of times on this podcast where we need to expose players to a training stimulus which will leave them resilient and robust and reduce the likelihood of them getting injuries. If they're not getting exposed to those training stimulus through the week, then they have to perhaps look elsewhere for them. And that sometimes is a driver for players to go and look elsewhere. And I think another one that we haven't spoken about is consistency. We've sort of touched on it there, where managers come and go all the time. The life expectancy of a manager in the Premier League is very, very short, and managers often bring their staff with them, so they come with a fitness coach. And clubs sometimes, and more clubs are doing this now, will have their own staff which sit outside of the manager's staff. So there is that level of consistency. So you will have heads of performance and fitness coaches and heads of medical and physiotherapists who are a fixture at the club.
Yeah.
But often a manager, when he's coming in, will say, I'm bringing my fitness coach with me. And that's often the one that is the point of contact with the players. That's the one that's delivering fitness to the players. So, when that manager goes, the fitness coach goes too, a new manager comes in with another new fitness coach. Yeah. So, how many fitness coaches in your career would you say you've worked with?
Oh my God. Roughly. Oh, at least 20.
Right. So you've got exposure to 20 different philosophies, 20 different delivery methods, all of this. And how can they get to know your training history?
Yeah.
How do they get to know what works for you? If you have your own fitness coach who works with you consistently throughout your career, who knows you inside out, knows absolutely what it takes to get you performing at your best week in, week out,
Yeah.
then surely that's an attractive proposition for a manager, for a coach, because he's a better version of Stephen Warnock is available on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I said this on one of the podcasts, didn't I, previously, where when we worked together at Blackburn, I was arguably the fittest I'd ever been, and then
Yeah.
we obviously joined back up at Aston Villa, and when you rang me to say you were coming in, I was so happy because I knew what I was getting, and I
Yeah.
knew in my head I was going, right, I'm going to be as fit as I've ever been again, and I was, and I got fit again, and I felt incredible. So I totally get that point of view that you've just brought up, and it's something that I suppose you don't think about until it's actually said, and it's a very simple point, but a very true point as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that applies very much to physiotherapists as well,
Yeah,
masseurs.
I think
I
masseurs is huge.
I think masseurs is a massive one because they are very intuitive. As soon as, if you've had the same massage therapist working with you, a soft tissue therapist, as soon as they lay hands on you, they can feel there's
Yeah,
something different about you today. There's a tightness here that you don't usually have.
yeah,
And again, that communicates through to the fitness coach. Warney's got this issue. I'm only going to make you aware of that information. What you do with that information, how you interpret it in terms of what it actually means
yeah,
is up to you. But it opens the window up to, okay, so now we'll do some more tests or some different tests on Warney, and that has a better chance of keeping you healthy. If you're working with a different massage therapist frequently,
yeah,
because they change or because there's a number of different ones or they might be part-time or whatever it might be, then they don't have that intuitive knowledge of your body and of
yeah,
how you react normally to training. So I
yeah,
think, we spoke at the very beginning of this podcast that it's not just fitness coaches, it's nutritionists, it's psychologists, it's massage therapists, it's all kinds of different roles that are available at the clubs, but they're available to players in a slightly different way.
yeah, definitely. So the future of the game, where does this all end up?
Well, I don't see it going in the LeBron James way in football, where
No.
each player has their own entourage around them. Certainly not from a fitness coach's perspective, because I think that we've spoken before, haven't we, that fitness is very specific to the
Yeah,
team. And it's a team game, probably more so than in basketball and other sports. And so the fitness coach is preparing the team for a particular way of playing. So I think that although we might have certain fitness coaches who work with individual players from a end stage rehab, I think that's very different
yeah,
from working week to week. I think that we'll have private fitness coaches, as they do now, working with players in the off season
yeah,
and in international breaks because they're not preparing for games. I think that looks very different. I don't necessarily think we'll have individual fitness coaches working with players on a one-to-one basis as much in season, because we've spoken before about the amount of games that players are expected to
yeah,
play. It's just too congested in
yeah.
season. I don't think those opportunities are. I do think that we'll see a rise in support staff. I think we'll see
I was going to
individual.
say that.
Yeah, I think we'll see more physiotherapists working individually with players. I certainly think we'll see more private massage therapists and soft tissue therapists. Sports psychology, I don't think we've come anywhere near realizing the potential of what sports psychology can bring in football. And I think that players will attach themselves to individual sports psychologists that will help benefit their performance. So that's where I see that I think players will construct and create these performance environments around themselves, which will help to benefit them and drive their performance levels. But I think that will not include fitness coaches in season.
Yeah.
That would be my kind of interpretation of where we might be going.
Yeah. I think from a nutrition point of view, private chefs, I think the clubs will look to employ more. I think they'll delegate as and when where they go, but I think players will always take individual chefs to the houses as well, not just for themselves, but also from the family point of view, just to make sure that they're all eating well and they can afford to because of the riches within the Premier League. I think from a massage point of view, I think it's a very safe thing to have your own private massage or masseur. I think my biggest thing is I think clubs will want more control over what goes on with the players because they're not £5 and £10 million assets now. They're £100 million assets, if not more. And also, like you said earlier on, if a player gets injured or the money that they're paying them, they want complete control of that. Whether we like it or not, it's a very business-led industry now. So from the top, they want full control. That's what they'll want. And I just think from the club's point of view, with fitness coaches, I think they'll just employ more because without being disrespectful, it's easier to employ more staff within a club than foot a bill of X amount with players being out injured from external help.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the way it might go.
The one thing I would say on that is backroom staff, believe it or not, in Premier League clubs are chronically underpaid.
Yeah.
There is a feeling within the game that you are lucky to be here and working for this club.
Yeah.
And I think clubs do take advantage
true.
of that. And I think if you look at the wages that are paid to heads of performance in the NFL, and
Yeah.
even I was up at the University of Southern California last week doing a presentation. If you look at the salaries, just jump on Google and have a look at the salaries that are being paid to the fitness staff in the NFL or even in college sport, and they are astronomical compared to what is paid to Premier League staff,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
True. Yeah.
So I think this may be linked to a rise in the number of private coaches, but a lot of good, talented staff have left the clubs
And gone on their
because
own.
it's more lucrative for them
Yeah,
to
it's
work
interesting.
privately.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So there is that. I've seen in my time in football a gradual deterioration in delivery skills and applied practice in young fitness coaches coming into the game. I see a lot of fitness coaches coming into the game now who are extremely well qualified academically,
Yeah.
but are inexperienced. And I think we're losing a lot of experience because clubs are not prepared to pay the market rate, if you want to call it that. So
Yeah.
that's one point I would make on that. If clubs want to stop this gradual drift of players going to private external coaches, then they probably need to look at the salaries that they're paying the staff that are in-house and the quality that they're getting. Do you foresee a time where clubs will insert a clause into a player's contract forbidding them from going to see an external coach?
Well, that's the way that they keep the wages down in a way, then, isn't it? Because if you stop them going to see private fitness instructors, then you can pay them less. Now, then it's up to the players to negotiate that and say, absolutely not. And I think the players will always have that power because let's say, for talking sake, Mohamed Salah's agreeing his new contract at Liverpool and they want to get this deal over the line. And the stumbling block is, we don't want you to use a private coach. Yeah, but I bring in £100 million in shirt sales every single season. Am I signing or not? Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen again. The players will have the power, and if you started that, I don't think the players would be happy about that situation. I don't get me wrong. I think there might be younger players who don't have that relationship with private people as of yet, might be a little bit naive, but I think the agents would be sharp on that as well. So I wouldn't see that happening, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And it's often the agent who finds these private coaches, not the player.
And they'll get a kickback.
It's often the agent who reaches out and tries to improve things for their client.
Yeah.
And that's where sometimes these Instagram coaches can be problematic, because a lot of the work that I see is driven more about, or it seems to be more about, promotion of the coach rather than supporting the performance of the player.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm not on social media very much.
Yeah. Right. That's very interesting. It was a fascinating thing. It's something that's going round at the moment, talked about a lot. It has been highlighted at Preston under Paul Higginbottom. It was something that we looked at the other day and thought, yeah, it's definitely something that we need to speak about. So that has been another episode of Strain on the Game. Please subscribe, like, and follow. And that has been another episode. Thanks for joining us. Follow us on social media and YouTube at Strain on the Game. Subscribe, like, and follow.